In the middle of that room, dominated by white, her eyes slowly and wearily opened. She looked around calmly, finally realizing she was in a hospital room after yet another health setback caused by her blood pressure. She tried to sit up and glance to her right, only to notice him standing by the window. He heard her movement and rushed toward her with wide strides, holding her hand with concern. "Take it easy. You're still tired," Jungkook said. "What happened?" Laura asked. "Your stress affected your heart again. If this continues, things will get worse. You have to take care of yourself," Jungkook replied. He spoke, trying to keep his tone cold despite the worry evident on his face and in the warmth of his touch. She responded in a low, exhausted voice, watching his eyes. "It's not like I chose this. It's my fate," Laura said. "It's normal to suffer sometimes in life, but it's not normal to bottle that pain up," Jungkook replied. "And what if that pain doesn't want to hear us out, doesn't let us speak?" she asked, her voice breaking, clearly referring to him. He gazed into her emerald eyes for minutes, his chest tightening and his heart pounding, feeling once again the love that had always overwhelmed him and made him surrender to her. "You never said the pictures were fake. I asked you. I kept asking, hoping you'd say that wasn't you in them or that they were fabricated, but you confirmed it," Jungkook said. "You're right. I admit I was wrong, disgusting even, for entering those filthy places and getting close to that scumbag. But it was all for a reason. Jack, he's the one who killed that girl and framed my poor brother. I'm trying to get justice," Laura explained. "By selling yourself to him? Laura, I understand you, my love. I understand your desire to see those dogs punished, but not at the cost of your peace, your health, or your dignity. Look at your heart. It's become weak from all the stress. You don't have to do things you hate just to get your justice. I'm here, right by your side until my last breath. Just tell me who they are, and I'll make sure they rot in jail in front of your eyes," Jungkook said. "I want to take my revenge with my own hands. I've become strong enough to face them. There's not much left. I promise in the next 2 days, everything will be over," Laura replied. She raised her hand to his cheek, leaning in to kiss it softly. He let out a heavy sigh, then embraced her tightly, speaking in a low voice. "Laura, I trust you blindly. Maybe I hurt you with my words earlier, but it was only because I was angry," Jungkook said. "And I forgive you, my love. I understand," Laura replied. "I just hope you don't hurt yourself, and please don't get too close to that lowlife. Don't forget, I'm a man, and I'm jealous of my woman. I can't bear the thought of her with another man, no matter the reason," Jungkook said. "I promise, the next time I see him will be the last," Laura assured him. "I'll be waiting," Jungkook said, kissing her forehead with a sad smile. He couldn't deny how much he hated this situation, being forced to accept his fiancée meeting with another man. How could he bear the thought of her speaking to someone else? Yet he had no choice but to endure it. For her. Suddenly, he spoke again. "I don't want there to be any physical contact between you two, or I'll forget about this revenge of yours entirely, darling," Jungkook said. "As you wish, my possessive man," Laura replied.
They shared a look, an intimate moment filled with love and longing. He knew he should let her rest, but he couldn't stop himself from kissing her forehead once again. However, just before he could pull away, she grabbed his hand, gently squeezing his fingers. "Jungkook," she said, her voice tinged with hesitation. He looked down at her, concern crossing his features. "Yes, my love." She searched his eyes and he could see the vulnerability reflected in her gaze. "Can you stay just a little longer?" His heart skipped a beat at her request. He found himself unable to deny her anything when she looked at him that way. Nodding, he gently sat down on the edge of the bed. Laura shifted slightly to make space, silently inviting him to lie beside her. Feeling his weight on the bed, he turned to face her, his gaze never leaving hers. In the warm hospital room, their proximity was intoxicating. The air felt heavy with unspoken words and desires. "Don't look at me like that," Laura whispered, her cheeks flushed. "Like what, my love?" he asked, his voice soft. His fingers traced the outline of her cheek, and he could feel her skin heating up beneath his touch. Laura swallowed, finding it hard to maintain her composure. Like you want to kiss me senseless, she admitted. A small smirk formed on his lips. And what if I do? He replied, his fingers sliding down to her collarbone, eliciting a shiver from her. You know we can't, she said, her words tinged with both a hint of desperation and a hint of amusement. He inched closer, his face hovering just above hers. And why can't I? He asked, his voice dripping with desire. She bit her lip, suppressing a moan. The nurses will come in at any moment, she protested. Let them come, he whispered, his breath tickling her ear. He nuzzled his face into the crook of her neck, reveling in the scent of her skin. She let out a soft gasp, her fingers gripping the sheets. 𝐏𝐚𝐫𝐤&𝐉𝐚𝐬𝐬𝐢𝐧𝐞, She tried to protest, but her words lacked conviction. His hand slid under her hospital gown, his fingers finding and tracing the curve of her hip. Why should I? He challenged, his touch leaving a trail of fiery sensations in its wake. It was now well into the night. 𝐏𝐚𝐫𝐤&𝐉𝐚𝐬𝐬𝐢𝐧𝐞, stood on the balcony, the city lights glistening in the background. The cool night air brushed against his face, but it did little to cool the fire burning within him. He leaned against the railing and closed his eyes, willing himself to find some sense of peace. But her face, her scent, her voice, they were all consuming his every thought. In the quiet of the night, he couldn't help but replay the moments they had just shared in that hospital room. The way her skin had felt under his touch, the sound of her breath catching in her throat, it was all so vivid, so intense. He gritted his teeth, frustration welling up within him. He wanted her, more than anything, and yet he knew he had to keep his cool. For her sake, for their future together. Suddenly, a soft sound caught his attention. He turned his head to find her standing in the doorway, a weary expression on her face. Her eyes met his, and for a moment, they just stood there, silently watching each other. Then, she took a hesitant step forward, closer to where he stood. I woke up and you weren't there, she murmured, her voice tinged with a hint of worry. His gaze softened, and he pushed away from the railing, fully turning towards her. I couldn't sleep, he admitted. She closed the distance between them until she was standing right in front of him. In the dim light, he noticed the tired bags under her eyes, the exhaustion that seemed to cling to her every feature. A part of him wanted to protest, to tell her to rest and recover. But the other part, the part that craved her touch, the part that loved her so deeply, wouldn't allow it. She rested her head against his chest, her arms wrapping around his waist. He could feel the warmth of her body through the thin fabric of her hospital gown. Instinctively, he held her tighter, his palm pressed against her lower back. You should be resting, he whispered. She looked up at him, her eyes shimmering with emotions she couldn't quite conceal. I can't sleep when you're not by my side. He sighed, his heart both melting and breaking at her words. He knew he should be the strong one, the sensible one, but how could he resist her? He threaded his fingers through her hair, cradling the back of her head. You're going to be the death of me, you know that? He murmured, his voice hoarse with desire. She chuckled softly, her breath hitching ever so slightly. Death by love, that's a pretty romantic way to go, don't you think? She teased, her fingers tracing patterns on his chest. He couldn't help but smile, his thumb gently tracing the line of her jaw. You and your smart-ass comments, he murmured affectionately. Evening arrived, and everyone gathered around the dinner table in the largest suite. After the girls had decided to cook the meal themselves tonight, they sat together, chatting and laughing, and it became obvious to most of them that the relationship between 𝐏𝐚𝐫𝐤&𝐉𝐚𝐬𝐬𝐢𝐧𝐞 and Laura had significantly improved. Sona raised her eyes coldly as she noticed Laura and 𝐏𝐚𝐫𝐤&𝐉𝐚𝐬𝐬𝐢𝐧𝐞 laughing and talking a little too intimately. How he held her hand and whispered in her ear. She rolled her eyes when her gaze met Laura's, who responded with a sly, side smile before lifting a spoon and feeding Jungkook, clearly trying to provoke her. "What do you think, my love?" Laura asked. "Everything tastes perfect when it's made by you, my precious," Jungkook replied. "Did you two make up?" Sona suddenly blurted, interrupting everyone's conversation. She had reached her limit and could no longer hold back. Laura smiled calmly before responding, "Of course I made up with my love, but tell me, how did you even know we had a fight? How did you know we were in a relationship to begin with? I know Jungkook better than anyone. It was obvious that Sona began, "that I love Laura. And no matter how much we fight, we'll always come back to each other," Jungkook said, cutting her off coldly. Sona looked at him sharply for a moment, feeling once again like he was constantly pushing her away despite her deep love for him that had lasted for years. Her tears betrayed her as she spoke with emotion and anger. "I don't understand. What does she have that I don't? Didn't I know you before her? Didn't I care more about you than you did yourself? Didn't I love you more sincerely than she ever could? Why her and not me? Because she doesn't force me to love her. Because my heart finds peace with her, not with you. Why can't you understand, Sona? It's not shameful to love someone who doesn't love you back, but it is wrong to try to force them. You're dear to me, truly, but like a sister. I never saw you as a woman I could love or marry." Silence fell over the table. Many of them were shocked by the harshness in his words, even though Jungkook spoke them sincerely and without hesitation. Sona's face twisted from anger to despair, tears streaming down her cheeks uncontrollably. Laura's expression remained calm, her gaze firmly fixed on Jungkook, not even glancing at Sona. Sona looked around the table, hoping to find a drop of compassion in at least someone's eyes, but all she saw were averted faces. She looked at Laura again, finding in her expression an infuriating mix of mockery and superiority. Without knowing what to say, the only one who didn't appear uncomfortable was Laura. In fact, she seemed to take pleasure in Sona's pain. She leaned her elbows on the table, her chin resting in one hand, as if watching captivating drama unfold. Sona's gaze shifted to the one person at the table who also displayed a lack of sympathy. Jin sat there, his demeanor cool, observing her with a blank expression. The lack of kindness or even a hint of concern in his eyes pained her the most. Laura leaned in closer to Jungkook, her hand gently placing on his thigh as she whispered just loud enough for the others to hear. "You did good, love. You finally gave that woman a reality check." In response, Jungkook wrapped his arm around Laura's waist, bringing her even closer, and planted a kiss on her head, completely disregarding Sona right in front of them. The sight of them together caused a surge of pain in Sona's heart, but no one else seemed to notice and the girls simply went back to eating. Sona slowly got up from the table, her head hung low and her shoulders shaking from silent sobs. All eyes remained fixed on Sona as she quietly left the table, her departure marked by a tense silence. Laura watched her walk out of the room, and a trace of guilt could be seen on her face. Despite the satisfaction she had felt moments ago, Laura began feeling remorse for her actions. Finally, the silence was broken as Jessica spoke with a soft tone, her words filled with understanding. "Shouldn't someone go after her? She's clearly very upset." In response, Laura got up from the table, her eyes locked on the door through which Sona had just walked out. "I'll go," Laura announced before anyone else could volunteer. Despite a few raised eyebrows and the initial shock, no one objected. Laura headed out of the room, her guilt tugging at her conscience with every step. Once outside, Laura found herself in the hallway of the suite. There were only 2 places Sona could have gone, and she first checked the room they were sharing. It was empty. Laura walked a few doors down to the other room and knocked gently. There was no answer, so she pushed the door open and called out softly, "Sona, can I come in?" Hearing a faint sound of crying, she stepped into the room and saw Sona sitting on the floor in the corner, her head buried in her hands. The sight of her tears filled Laura with a mixture of remorse and hesitation. Laura walked over and knelt down a few feet away, keeping her distance but ensuring Sona could hear her when she spoke. "I just wanted to check on you," Laura said, her voice gentle. Sona slowly raised her head, her cheeks streaked with tears, and looked at Laura with an expression of pain and humiliation. "How could you—" Sona choked out between sobs. Laura's guilty expression deepened, and she hung her head as she responded, "I know. I shouldn't have said the things I did today." Sona let out a sharp, bitter laugh, her eyes filled with pain as she spoke. "You enjoyed it. My pain, my shame. You were happy to see me like this, weren't you?" Silence confirmed Sona's suspicion, causing Sona to cry harder. Laura wanted to deny it. Truth was impossible to hide, so she avoided Sona's gaze and sat silently on the floor. Sona let out a dry laugh, still crying, and spoke through her tears. "You think you have the right to say that? You're the one who constantly looks for ways to provoke me, to make me unhappy." Sona wiped her tears roughly, her voice growing stronger as she responded, "Kind? You think you were kind? You always had a sly smile on your face every time you tried to humiliate me in front of other people." Sona stood up, her tears still flowing but her voice shaking with anger. "You say I tried to make your boyfriend break up with you. But what about you? Constantly clinging to him, never leaving him alone, even when he's obviously uncomfortable with your attention?" Sona's voice trembled with anger and pain as she retorted, "I don't stalk him, I care about him. I've known him longer than you have, and I've been there for him even when you probably knew about his existence." Laura shot back coldly, "He loves me, not you. Stop trying to cling on to something so obviously lost."